Most people think Love Island is a dating show. It's not. At least, not entirely, because if you strip away the bikinis, the villa, and the slow-motion walks around the pool, what you're left with is something surprisingly strange. A group of strangers are removed from the outside world. Their relationships are put under pressure. Their decisions are influenced by competition. They're constantly being watched, and millions of people judge every move they make. If that sounds less like a dating show and more like an experiment, that's because it kind of is. And the longer you look at Love Island, the harder it becomes to ignore the fact that it may be one of the biggest social experiments on television. Here's why. They basically kidnap your dating life. Before we talk about love, we need to talk about the villa, because the villa is not real life. In real life, you have a job, bills, friends, family, a phone that's somehow always in your hand. Love Island takes all of that away. No phones, no scrolling, no texting your best friend screenshots with the message, "Am I crazy or is this a red flag?" You're basically dropped into a giant relationship simulator, and that's important because most of us don't spend all day thinking about dating. We're distracted by work, school, the gym, Netflix, trying to remember why we walked into a room. But in the villa, dating becomes the main event. There aren't many distractions, there aren't many places to go, and there definitely aren't many people to talk to. It's the same group of people, every day, all day, which means small things start feeling much bigger. A weird comment becomes a discussion. A misunderstanding becomes drama. Someone forgetting to say good morning becomes a full-scale investigation. And then there's the cameras. Every conversation, every flirt, every awkward moment, potentially watched by millions of people. So before we even get into the relationships, Love Island has already done something fascinating. It has removed people from their normal environment and placed them inside a controlled one. And once you change the environment, you start changing human behavior. Once contestants are inside the villa, something else starts to happen. Their options shrink a lot. In real life, if things don't work out with someone, you move on. There are millions of people in the world. On Love Island, your dating pool is basically whoever is standing near the fire pit. And that's where psychology starts getting involved, because people tend to value things more when they become scarce. It's the same reason nobody wants the last salad at a party, but everybody wants the last slice of pizza. The less available something feels, the more valuable it becomes. And the same thing can happen with people. Contestants aren't choosing from an endless number of options. They're choosing from a very small group they see every single day. Then producers throw in a bombshell. A brand new contestant walks into the villa, and suddenly everyone starts acting like the newest iPhone just dropped. Not because the bombshell is automatically better, but because they're new, and new creates possibility. Now add competition. The second multiple people want the same person, that person suddenly becomes even more desirable. Everybody starts wondering, what do they see that I don't? And before long, attraction isn't just about chemistry, it's about scarcity, competition, and the fear of missing out. Because in the villa, people aren't just worried about finding the right person, they're worried about losing the opportunity altogether, and that pressure can change the way people make decisions. Everybody's performing, but scarcity isn't the only thing influencing behavior. Because Love Island has something most relationships don't. An audience. And not just a few people, millions. The islanders know they're being watched. Every conversation, every argument, every questionable decision made at 1 a.m., someone is seeing it. Now, most people act differently when they're being observed. You probably act one way when you're home alone, and a completely different way when your boss walks into the room. Love Island takes that feeling and turns it up to 100. Because the audience doesn't just watch, they vote. They influence who stays, who leaves, and sometimes who becomes the hero or villain of the season, which means contestants aren't just trying to build relationships, they're also managing their reputation. Suddenly, every decision comes with a second question, not just, what does my partner think? But what will the audience think? Will this make me look loyal? Will this make me look fake? And that's where things get interesting, because when people know they're being watched, authenticity and performance start blending together. Contestants might still be genuine, but they're also aware they're creating an impression. And once people start adjusting their behavior for an invisible audience, you're no longer just watching a dating show, you're watching how humans behave when public opinion becomes part of the game. And once public opinion enters the picture, something else starts to happen. Status. Because even inside a villa full of attractive people, some contestants become more influential than others. Some are popular, some are trusted, and some seem to have the ability to make the entire villa change its mind overnight. It's basically high school with better lighting. Over time, certain couples become what fans call power couples. They're popular, they're secure, and everyone knows it. People listen to their opinions, they seek their approval, and sometimes they even use them as a guide for what's considered acceptable behavior. Think about it. If one of the most popular islanders supports you, that's a good thing. If one of them turns against you, good luck. Before long, contestants aren't just navigating relationships, they're navigating a social hierarchy. Who's respected? Who's trusted? Who's on the outside looking in? And because status can affect both relationships and public perception, romantic decisions can become surprisingly strategic. Not always, but sometimes. Because in the villa, finding love isn't the only challenge. Figuring out where you stand in the social order matters too. And once that hierarchy forms, another powerful force starts taking over. Groupthink. Once a social hierarchy forms, something else starts to happen. People start influencing each other a lot. Remember, the islanders spend nearly every hour of every day together. They eat together, hang out together, work out together, gossip together. There is no escaping the group. And when people spend that much time together, opinions spread fast, really fast. One person thinks someone is being shady, then two people think it, then five. And before you know it, the entire villa is holding a meeting about it. It's like a game of telephone, except everyone is attractive and somehow crying near a fire pit. The interesting part is that people don't always realize it's happening. Humans naturally look to the group for clues about how to think and behave, especially when they're in unfamiliar situations. And Love Island is definitely an unfamiliar situation. So when enough people start agreeing on something, others often follow. Not because they're fake, not because they're weak, because that's just how people work. The longer the islanders stay isolated together, the stronger that effect can become. And that's why a small disagreement can suddenly become villa-wide drama. At a certain point, people aren't just reacting to each other, they're reacting to the group's reaction. And that's when Love Island starts revealing something much bigger than dating. It starts revealing how humans behave in groups. And then Love Island introduces Casa Amor, which is basically the producers looking at stable relationships and saying, let's see what happens if we make this everyone's problem. For days, contestants are encouraged to build connections, establish trust, and commit to a partner. Then suddenly they're separated. New people arrive, new options appear, and everything gets tested. It's the perfect psychological pressure cooker. Because Casa Amor forces contestants to choose between two powerful instincts: commitment and curiosity. On one hand, they have a connection they've already built. On the other, there's the possibility that someone better might be waiting. And humans are surprisingly bad at ignoring possibility. That's where fear of missing out starts kicking in. What if this new person is a better match? What if I'm settling too early? What if everyone else is exploring their options except me? Suddenly, people start taking risks they never would have taken a week earlier. And when those risks backfire, something else happens. People start justifying their decisions. Maybe they convince themselves they weren't that happy. Maybe they focus on one small issue and turn it into a bigger problem. Maybe they tell themselves they had no choice. Not because they're lying, because humans are really good at creating explanations for decisions we've already made. That's what makes Casa Amor so fascinating. It doesn't create new personalities, it reveals existing ones. How loyal are people when temptation appears? How much uncertainty can they tolerate? What happens when trust and opportunity collide? Because when the pressure reaches its highest point, people stop showing who they want to be and start showing who they actually are. So what does all of this actually tell us? Well, maybe more than we'd like to admit. Because while most of us will never step foot inside the Love Island villa, the psychology behind it exists everywhere. We all care about validation. We all wonder what other people think of us. And whether we realize it or not, that affects the choices we make. Scarcity influences us too. The less available something seems, the more valuable it can feel. Whether it's a product, an opportunity, or even a person. Social pressure plays a role as well. Friends influence relationships, public opinion influences relationships, sometimes entire groups influence relationships, and first impressions, those matter more than most people would like to admit. The difference is that in everyday life, all of these forces are usually hidden. On Love Island, they're impossible to miss. Everything is amplified. The attraction, the pressure, the competition, the fear of rejection, the need for approval. It's all happening in one place for everyone to see, which is why Love Island might be more than just a dating show. It might be one of the most interesting social experiments on television, because maybe the most fascinating part isn't who falls in love. It's what happens when ordinary human behavior is placed under extraordinary pressure. And if the villa really is a social experiment, the results might tell us just as much about ourselves as they do about the contestants.